Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might suggest, Mr. Chairman, that along this topic, there was a great book published last year in April of 2016. Stephen Chase wrote called "The Third Wave," and it might be something we might try to encourage all the members of our committee to take a look at that to see, because he addressed this issue at least over 2 years ago, but finally got his book published last year. But it's an excellent article, book about the possibilities that we have in this, the third wave, if you all haven't read that. Mr. Kuhn, I've got a question for you. Do you know whether or not the IOT provisions are being included within certification for LEED buildings? Do you know whether or not they've creeped into there to be one of those key factors?
I don't know specifically with respect to LEED buildings. One of the problems is that IoT is a kind of a general phrase that can be applied to almost any internet-connected device. So what we are particularly more interested in is standards or best practices that relate to energy efficiency, to systems actually working regardless of the technology and regardless of whether you label that as IoT.
I just would like to see us move into that. I think it's an opportunity for people to get more LEED certification and to use our technology, the Internet of Things, to be able to do more of higher efficiency buildings. Let me, just an overall concept of what I've heard all six of you in your presentation. With this proliferation of Internet of Things, both in Chase's book and your own technology, and what you've seen and how it's grown over the years, it seems like it opens the door for a virtual smorgasbord of bad actors and malware being developed. Because if, as the article said in USA Today this morning, said we can't even protect our electric grid. How do we think with all these smaller firms, how are we going to protect someone from gaining access to our personal lives, whether it's a telephone or our cars or whatever that might be? What role can we do or should we be playing to try to correct that?
So let me just take it if I could. That's one of the points that I tried to make in my initial testimony. From where I sit, we can do as good a job as possible at making sure that our devices are secure and that default passwords are changed. In fact, we don't even use default passwords at all for that exact reason. But what's missing is if I'm in my house and somebody's going around rattling the door, I can call the police and say, hey, there's a bad guy trying to get in. In the internet, people are rattling my doorknob hundreds of times per day, and there's not really anyone I can call. I feel like we need a national or maybe international, more effective law enforcement response. We need to have somebody looking at bad guys and tracking them down. I can give you a list of IP addresses in Ukraine that tried to get into our system today, but there's nobody to give it to. Okay. So I see that as we need both sides. We need to have better door locks, but we need to have somebody tracking down the bad guys and doing something about it.
Okay, thank you, and I hope the rest of you, somebody get back to us. I'd like to hear from your perspective, because if our utilities can't prevent it, I wonder about individual firms that don't have that. Mr. Kosick, back to you, because I really thought Ms. Schakowsky hit a home run with her question. But a follow-up question I think would be just as fundamentally is, if we think there's a predicate for using seat belts, why are we able to operate our vehicles without wearing a seatbelt?
Do you mean why isn't it?
Why are our manufacturers not putting a triggering mechanism in so that if it is so important, why don't we go so fundamentally as a car can't start unless someone has a seatbelt on?
Well, I can't answer the broader societal question. I can say that we do a lot to strongly encourage and remind.
A little bell comes on every now. I know when my wife doesn't put her seatbelt on in the car, a little beep goes on. But but something that's fundamental. If we say that's going to be something we can save lives and save energy, and for healthcare, if we would wear seatbelts. I'm just curious why we've not done that.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but again, the reminders are pretty relentless and to some, you know, pretty irritating. But I think they've become more pervasive. You know, we've identified more direct ways to communicate that are harder to ignore. But
Thank you. My time's expired.
Well, thank you. The gentleman's time has expired.